Good morning, everybody. Rucho Taba'ot, welcome. So first, as always, we thank our sponsor, Rita Geller, for the nice refreshments, for the books that we all enjoy, and we hope that Rita gets down here fairly soon. She's been delayed. She wasn't feeling so well, but we hope to see her soon. And everybody that in our community that needs a refuah, we hope that they'll get their refuah shlema quickly to Mehera. So the Gemara. Oh, thank you, Marcia. The Gemara it's a series of volumes, but that in a certain way it's artificial, because originally it was a whole body of knowledge and it was handed down, teacher to student, father to son, whatever, and eventually it got written down, codified, and organized. But when we look at what we're studying today, it's part of a whole. And what I mean by that is that, well, we're going to set down a principle based on what we learned last week and the week before, and then we're going to try to find out, does that principle apply elsewhere, and can we find other references that apply to our situation that we're studying, okay? So what was our case? Our first case, we had Fran and Miriam holding onto the sweater, right? And they both claimed that they picked it up at the same time, or they didn't. Actually, that wasn't a claim, right? What was your claim, Fran?
That I picked it up and it was mine.
You picked it up first, and it belongs to you. And Miriam said the same thing, right? And now we, as the court, as the judges, had to decide what to do, how to handle it, because there were no witnesses as to what transpired. All we had was the word of the two litigants, two claimants, and we had to come up with a way to settle the case. And the decision ultimately was that each one of them should swear that she has no less than half of the item, right? And then we divide it. And we divide it either, if it's the type of item that can be divided and each half now retains a value, we just cut it in half. And if it's the type of thing that wouldn't happen, so in this case it was a sweater, we cut the sweater in half, it's not usable by anybody, so we would sell it and split the proceeds. So there's a principle involved, right? What's the principle? The principle is that when we don't know how to make a decision, or we can't decide based on evidence, so there's a doubtful situation there, and we need to act. We're the court, right? We have to decide what to do. And so in our case, and there were several cases. There was the case of they both said they picked it up at the same time. There was a case where, no, they didn't say that. Fran's case, the first one was each one of them said, I picked it up first and it's all mine. Then there was the case where one person said, I picked it up and it's mine. The other one said, we took it together. Therefore, we should be sharing, we should split it. So in that case, do you remember what the decision on that was, Marilyn? When you have one said I have half and one said I have all?
The one that has the most is the one that has the credibility, right? So you have to swear.
Well, what we decided in the end is that, what would happen, Fran?
I think it was the first person said she got the whole, and the second person said they got half. So the second person got half of the half. Right,
that's right. So because
the person said she had up to 3/4 of it.
Right, so they had to swear, and what Harriet is saying is that, so the person who says that it's all mine swears that I have no less than 75%. And the one that says that it's half mine swears that she has no less than 25%. Why? Because the first half is not in dispute. The person who says that it's all mine, she says it's all mine. The person says that it's half mine, admits the fact that the other person has at least half, right? Therefore, the only discussion, the only dispute is on the second half. Therefore, that second half gets divided, okay?
Makes no sense to me.
Okay, so tell me what would be a better solution. I mean, we're all friends here. We're the court. We're the judges. How are we going to decide this case?
Thing with how they base it, that one's worth 75% and one's worth, should get 25%. It's like based on what? Someone says, I saw it first. I held more of it.
Well, so what should we do? Two people come into the court, right? They're holding on to an object.
find a way either to share it throughout the year or sell it and,
Share it throughout the year.
well, no, you take it every 1 month, I'll take it the next week. The whole thing's
Well,
ridiculous.
but suppose they don't agree to that, and they're coming to us. See, if you have a situation where two people have a difference of opinion about who owns a particular item, and they're able to work it out on their own, they don't need us.
I
they
think
don't-
they should be told to work it out.
They don't need us. So if you've ever been sued,
Talk about a frivolous lawsuit.
if you've ever been sued or you've ever sued anyone, so the judge says, when the case is called, the judge says, go out and try to settle it. If you can't settle it, come back. Right? That's what happens in our courts. And so the same thing, I assume, would have happened there. So before, we're at the stage now, they can't work it out. The only way that this can be settled is by the action of the judges. We have to do something. So what do we do now? So in our case, in our several cases, where an object is a found object, or we had the case of the purchased object, right? Somebody had a booth in our boutique, right? And it was a particular work of art or whatever it is, and two people wanted it. They both gave money to the vendor. How do we decide that? So in all these cases, the way that the problem is solved, or the way that the decision is made on our part, is by having the two litigants swear, right? So in the case of each one saying that they have the whole thing, the shvuah, the swearing that they do, says that I have no less than half, and we divide it. If it's one person says it's all mine, one says it's half mine, the item that's in, the amount that's in dispute is the second half. So the shvuah, the oath that they take is I have no less than 75%, I have no less than 25%, and they divide it in that way. So here you have a case of disputed ownership, basically, of an object, and we settle it in a particular way, right? In our cases, it was settled by means of taking an oath, okay? Because we have no other way to ascertain who is the owner. So does this principle apply in all cases where items are in dispute, or are there other cases where the courts, the rabbis, came to a different method of solving it? Okay, so that's what we're going to explore today. So if you're in the Hebrew part, so we're on Beis Amud Beis, we're on 2b, 13 lines down from the top. Okay. And if you're in the English, so you go to 2b, 2b1. The English starts in the middle of the book,
Okay.
and you'll see there's 2b1, 2b2, 2b3. So you're in 2b1. Okay, and the page number is on the right-hand corner of the page, the outer corner. So you're in 2b1, the second column, the last paragraph. Okay, everybody with me? Okay, so let's go. So the Gemara says, I understand what the decision is in our cases where we use the means that we use to settle dispute is by means of an oath where the people swear. Does that work everywhere? So the Gemara says, Lema masnisin de lo keben nanas. Are we saying then that the author of our Mishnah could not have been Ben Nanas? Ben Nanas was his name actually was Shimon ben Nanas. He lived around the year 100 or so. He was a contemporary of Rabbi Kiva, a well-respected authority, right, basically on property rights. And in another spot, he discusses a similar case, and we're going to get to that right away. But if you remember, our Mishnah has no author listed. If there's no author listed, now we try to figure out who is it that wrote it, because then we can find similar rulings of that same person and see if they're consistent. Okay, so the Mishnah, so our Gemara says, "Lema masnisin lo ben nanas," that our case, that our Mishnah is not like Ben Nanas. Now, if we take a look at the Rashi, right? Remember, Rashi is our big friend; he's our big help. So, if you're in the Hebrew, you're going to be able to follow this. So here's where I am. So if you count down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 32 lines down, okay, or from this break about 10 lines up. So Rashi says, "Delo ke benanas." What are we talking about? How do we know what bananas holds, right? Because he says, "B'Masechta Shavuos," and that is your handout number 1. And we're gonna read that kind of together. In Masechta Shavuos says Rashi, "Gabi chen v'ni al pen kaso." You have the case of the storekeeper and his ledger. That's a famous case, chen v'ni al pen kaso. If you remember that, you're going to impress your grandchildren for sure. Chen v'ni. So the Rashi, it's right here. If you come out from there, so you count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of text and go across.
Page 1?
That's in our Gemara. The page 1 is the reference, and we're going to get to that right now. So if you take a look at number 1, so page 1 or reference number 1, I have marked on there. This is the handout, the first handout, okay, and I made a little pink highlight. We're talking about the case of chen v'ni al pen kaso. What is that? It's, they didn't have banks the way we have banks. So if I were an employer, like let's say I was the landscaper at Century Village, right? But I don't only work in Century Village. I work in Century Village in Deerfield. I work in Kings Point, whatever it is. So I can't get on to all of my job sites on Friday at 2 o'clock to pay my workers. But I want to pay them, and they want to get paid. How do I work it out? So what I do is, in Century Village in Boca Raton, I make a deal with Famous Deli over there in the little shopping center, and I say to the lady that owns the store, "Listen, my workers are going to come in at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. They're going to bring with them timesheets signed by their foreman or whatever it is. You pay them, and then on Monday we'll settle up." Okay? So the chen v'ni, that's the storekeeper, with his pinkas is a ledger. So the lady that owns that store keeps a record of how much she paid to each of the workers, right? And all the other job sites do the same thing. Another type of case is, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, and it's Friday afternoon. We didn't buy challah, and Mindel and I are together. She doesn't have time to get home and bake challah. So we call, let's say we had kids visiting, and we call our daughter, we say, "Becky, go into Aroma and pick up challahs, and I'll pay Aroma later," right? And I call Aroma, and they agree to do this transaction because Becky doesn't have a credit card, whatever it is, and I'm going to pay her later. So Aroma is also a chen v'ni, a storekeeper, and they have a pinkas. They also have a ledger. Okay. Now what happens? So what happens is that on Monday morning, or probably on Sunday morning, maybe even Saturday night, the worker calls me and he says, "I didn't get paid. I went to the storekeeper and he didn't pay me. I didn't get paid." So I call up the lady at Famous, but I think they're closed on Sunday, right? So I have to wait till Monday, and I call her up and I said, "Listen, we had an arrangement. You didn't pay." "Yes, I did. I paid them." Well, now we've got a problem, right? The worker says, "What? I didn't get paid." The storekeeper says, "I advanced you the money by paying them." So we have a problem here with the chen v'ni al pen kaso. The chen v'ni with the ledger, there's a dispute there. How are we going to settle this one?
Why didn't he sign? Yeah.
Pardon?
Sign it.
I don't know. Why didn't he sign? Maybe they could have had better controls. Maybe they could have, logged in with taking a finger, like on the computer or whatever it is. But maybe they always did it this way. Maybe they all operated on the honor system. And this particular week, the workers claimed they didn't get paid, or one particular worker says they didn't get paid. Everybody else got paid somehow or other. She didn't pay me, right? So what is the case? That's the first handout. So let's see what they say. Now, what we're doing now is real scholarship, because we're not depending on what Rashi is telling us. We're looking up for ourselves. We're going to the original, to the primary source. This is Masechta Shavuos. It's the Gemara that deals with oaths, different types of oaths. And so when we know there's a reference to someplace else, we're going to try to go there and look for ourselves, right? So what does it say? So v'chen v'nialten kaso ketzad. What is such a case? Lo sheyomar lo ksov apin kasi shatachayev li masayim zuz. Not that he said to him, write in my ledger that you owe me 200 zuz. Elo omer lo tein livni sasayim chitin. Give my son, or in our case, my daughter, 2 measures of wheat, so I guess flour, so she can run back and bake the challah, right? Or tain to po alai sela mo, so give to my workers, if my worker, a sela, which is a large amount of, a large coin. So what's happening? So the Baal HaBayis, the employer, the homeowner, whatever, instructs the chenvani, which is the storekeeper, to either to give to his son or daughter in our case a bag of flour, or to give to the workers their salary. And what happens? Omer nasati, the chenvani, the storekeeper, the lady in Famous says, I gave them the money, right? V'hein omrin lo natalnu, and they're saying, we never got it. So now, how do we solve this problem, right? So, hu nishba v'notel v'hein nishba v'notlin. So Ben Nana says that the answer is the rabbis say, the majority, and we're going to see what Ben Nana says, that he swears that he did not receive, the storekeeper swears that he paid it, and the employer now is to pay them both. They swear, the storekeeper swears I gave it to him, the employee swears I did not receive it. So now the employer, poor Todd, who employs these landscapers, it's not bad enough that diesel fuel costs him so much. Now he's got to pay his employees twice, right? Because this is what happened. But Ben Nanas disagrees. Omar Ben Nanas, so what does Ben Nanas says? Ketzad elu ve'elu boy lidei shua shav. How can we do such a thing? Because we know for sure, in this case, one of them is going to lie. No question about it. Because in Fran's case, where Fran and Miriam are holding onto the sweater, it's possible that they both picked it up at the same time. That could have happened, right? And so when they're swearing, it's possible that they're both telling the truth. So if we're going to impose an oath on people, it's got to be in a situation where they can both be telling the truth. Otherwise, we're forcing somebody in a certain way to lie under oath, right? We don't want to be doing that. So Ben Nana says, in this case, with the chen v'nial pinchaso, it's impossible they're both telling the truth, right? How could it be? If the landscaper says, I did not get paid, and the storekeeper says, I laid out the money, one of them is lying, no doubt about it, right? It can't be. So Ben Nana says, how can we impose this requirement to swear when we know one of them is going to be lying? So then what is his solution? So he says, oh, I'm holding it in my hand. I couldn't find it. So he says, but Ben Nana says that, he says, how can we make them swear? Elahu notel shlo b'shvua, v'hein notlin shlo b'shvua.
Where are you reading?
I'm reading in the handout. In the first handout, you see the little pink.
Oh, on the side.
The middle.
In the middle.
I don't see banana.
Look at the.
It's 2 words. It's 2 words. I thought maybe it was 1 word. It's 2 words.
2 words, right.
You see the bar, Habayis, right?
So if you see where I made the little check mark or whatever, count down 10 lines, and you'll see from that point. So his Ben Nanas. Nanas means a short person, right? Right. So maybe his father was a short person. I don't really know. But anyway, so his solution is that they each take from the employer now. He's got to pay them both, and next time he's going to control the better. He's going to make sure, like Marguerite said, that there's a signature. He didn't do that. He didn't insist on that. He's stuck now. The grass cutter wants to get paid. The storekeeper said laid out the money. There's no way to prove it. Benana says we can't make them swear because one of them is not telling the truth. But so he made a mistake. This employer, he should have been a little bit smarter in dispersing money, and he's got to pay for that. He has to pay them both, and they don't swear. We don't make them swear, says Bananas, because why? Because one of them is going to be lying, and we can't be forcing somebody to come into court and lie under.
Do we learn from that a swear is useless?
Pardon?
No, it's the other way around.
Do we learn from this that a swear is unreliable?
Okay, so now the question the Gemara is asking is saying, in our case with Miriam and Fran, we solved it with a shvua, right? It's a situation with an item whose ownership is in dispute.
What's a shvua?
An oath.
Oh.
Okay. The item is in dispute, right? Fran and Miriam both say, I picked it up, it belongs to me, right? And we solved that dispute by asking them to swear, okay? But we're trying to determine, is that a principle that we're going to apply everywhere? Well, how about what Benana said? Benana says, in the case of the landscaper and the grass cutters and the storekeeper, we don't make them swear. How is that different, right? Why, Marilyn?
Don't they ask questions about the circumstance? In other words, before, maybe they're both telling the truth. Maybe the
That's what I'm
worker
thinking.
sent somebody in to get the money, and then the guy came back and said, I didn't get it, but he did get it. I mean, don't they ask?
Yeah, were there other customers
probate?
around?
So all of these things. So first of all, we're going to try to find out were there witnesses, right, to the transaction. If there are witnesses, the witnesses come and testify, and we're all done. And then we're gonna ask them a lot of questions. We're going to try to, in a sense, trip them up to find out that how accurate is their testimony. When we finally get to the point where the only way we can settle it is by the court taking some kind of an action. And so in the case of the two people pulling on the sweater, the court says, swear. In the case of the Chenvani with his Pinchas, right, the storekeeper and the ledger, so the rabbis say do that. Benana says, no, don't do that, because if you do that, you're forcing somebody to take a false oath, and we don't want to be doing that, okay? So he's saying that this principle that we've established, that you settle who owns a disputed item is by taking an oath, that doesn't apply everywhere, right? Because according to his opinion, that's not the way to settle the other case, okay?
But they can just ask them questions. I mean, did you go to pick up the money? What time were you there? What was she doing at that time? What did she say that she didn't give it to you? And then ask her what time he came, what were you doing when he came in, why didn't you? With these questions back and forth, you can find out who's lying.
Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Apparently in our case, they did all that. They interrogated both. They took them into a separate room, whatever. First of all, they have to make their claim with the other person present, right? So if
That's different.
Right. Oh, that's it.
Right?
They have to make the claim with the other person present.
exactly right. So you know, if I don't know who we're going to pick on. So if Marilyn and Marilyn are both claiming that they own a particular item, they come into court, each one makes their testimony in front with the other one present. In the end, the only way that we can settle this is by our action as the judges. We have to do something because each one of them seems to have their claim is just as valid as the other, and we have no way of knowing who really is telling the truth. So the rabbis, the first opinion in the case of the Chenvani, they say make them both swear. Bananas, who is a respected authority in property law, says we don't do that, because if we did it, we're making somebody
Swear.
under oath falsely. We don't want to do that. Okay, so that's another case. So now the Gemara is going to take a look at that, and our Gemara is going to look at that and say, how could that be? And would Ben Nanas' principle hold in our case as well? Okay, can we find a way that we're not contradicting what he said? Okay, so let's go on a little bit. So he says, what is the case? So go back to our Gemara. So he says, Lema masnisin loka ben nanas. So do we say that our Mishnah is not like Ben Nanas? Ben Nanas, because it's like Ben Nanas. Ketzad elu ve'elu boin lidei shuas shav. How can we impose on two people an oath when we know that one of them is going to be lying? So the Gemara says, no, we can work it out. It's afilu tema Ben Nanas. We can even say that Ben Nanas' principles will work, because what's the difference there and here? What's the difference in the case of the chenveni to the case of the sweater?
That one is lying.
That's right. What Fran is saying is that in the case of the sweater, it's possible that they're both telling the truth. In the case of the chenveni, it's not possible. They can't both be telling the truth, right? It can't be that one paid it, the other one didn't get it. That can't happen, right? So Hasam there, in the case of the chenveni, Vadai Shvua Shav Amor. So there'll definitely be a false oath made, right? To Travaya Bahadi Adadi Akbua, in the case of Fran and Miriam, it's possible that they both picked it up at the same time. It could have happened. So that case, so then we're not bothered by the fact that Ben Nanas laid out a different principle in the other Gemara, because it does not necessarily conflict with what we learned here. Okay, so that's not a problem for us. Okay, so let's look at another possibility. So lema masnisin de locus sumchus. So should we say that our Mishnah does not hold like what Sumchus says? That's your handout number 2. So your handout number 2, and I marked for you with a highlighter in the Hebrew and in English, so you can follow it in both ways. It's the big page, Marcia. Okay. So looking at the Hebrew, the Mishnah says, Shor shenagach esapara. So you have a situation where there is a cow in a pen, and there is an ox or a bull in the pen with her, and the ox gores the cow and kills the cow or injures the cow, whatever it is. So now the owner of the ox is liable for the damages. Okay, so if I don't know, let's if Tova owns an ox, right, and her ox gores Harriet's cow, so Harriet can go to Tova and say, Tova, listen, your ox gored my cow, you need to pay. If the ox killed the cow, whatever it is, you need to pay the damage. And if it turns out that ox had never done it before, they pay half damage. Whereas if the ox is a habitual gorer, they pay the full amount. But if it's never happened before, the lawyers, why that is, that's a topic for maybe next year. But the point is that she pays, Tova has to pay Harriet half the value of that cow. Okay. Now suppose says Naga Shor Naga Sapara Venimsa Uber Ubra Betsida. Oh.
She's pregnant.
She was pregnant. The fetus is lying on the ground next to the cow.
And it's dead?
And it's dead.
Ah.
And it's a fully formed fetus.
2 halves equal a whole.
What?
She'd have to pay half for each of them.
Why?
Well, you said she hadn't done, the ox hadn't done it before, but now it's 2 things that were killed. It wasn't just one.
Right.
So half for the cow and half for the calf.
Okay, so Marcia says that we know that the ox caused the death of the fetus also, right? That's what you're saying.
But that's the second incident. The fetus is the second. The first.
Yeah, but it was from the first one.
So
The cow's the first, the fetus is the second.
I know, but it
But
was
it's the same incident.
the fetus
Same
part,
incident, the cow.
they came, right, the
Part of the
fetus
cow.
happened because of the goring of the
Right.
cow.
so Marcia is saying that dead fetus was killed by the goring of the
Cow.
Right.
cow by the ox. Okay,
But the
but look
value-
what the Gemara, look what the Mishnah says. What?
Yeah, but the values are different, because you don't know what's gonna be with a little calf. It may never develop.
So there's about
you're wrong.
there's a schedule.
It's gonna grow up to be a big cow that's gonna be able to give birth, so.
And it's going to make Cholav Yisrael milk. No, but the point is that there is a schedule. There's a
I
schedule. A
see.
calf is worth less than an ox,
Oh.
but it doesn't matter. But look at the next couple of words.
Right.
We said Shor Shenagach Hasapara. So we know the ox gored the cow. V'nimtza ubra b'tzida, and alongside of the dead cow, there's a dead fetus. And what does it say
We only
next?
get a quarter for the dead
What
fetus.
does it say next? Who's reading Hebrew with me?
We're lucky we can read English.
So ein yadua im ad shelo nagcha yolda. We don't know, Margalit, right? We don't know when did this cow give birth.
Right.
Why does it matter?
Walked in, they found it.
Is it dead calf or a
The
living
cow,
calf?
the cow gave birth, and the shark came to her, and she was protecting her baby, so she started up.
Well, we're gonna get to that, but that's not the question. No, the question is the question.
If no one saw it though, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was
Nobody
just
saw
gonna
it,
say,
right.
if no one saw this, it could have been that she gave birth, then got injured.
Right, and in that case, what does Tova owe Harriet?
Just the
It was
half
just for the cow.
Just for the cow,
Cow.
right? Because the fetus could have been born and died, and then
Was it warm? Was it cold? Was
it was cold.
I mean, there's so much to this.
Right.
So-
It's not very amazing.
And only
we
a quarter for the.
we put them out in the pen in the afternoon, whatever it is. We come back in the morning, and we find the cow is dead and the fetus is next to it also dead. And now we know that there was only one ox in that pen, so we know it was Tova's ox. We have no question about that. But we don't know when was this fetus
Dead.
delivered. When did the fetus come out before the cow was gored or after? And it's not known. We don't know. So now, can we apply the principles that we've just learned to this case as well? Is it the same? Is it the same as Fran and Miriam holding the sweater,
No.
or is it the same as the Lady and Famous paying the landscaper?
It's similar to the second.
It's here we have another case where we have a dispute over what is owed, right? And we can't settle it based on their testimony because they didn't see it. They don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. But here we are. We're the court. We have the job to settle it. We have to come up with some sort of an answer for this problem that we found. So let's see. What does the Mishnah say in the handout? So he says we don't know where it happened, right? So what do? Mishalim chatzi nezek lepara. Bless you.
And
So
one quarter.
so Tova must pay Harriet half the value of the cow,
And 1/4.
right? Because the cow, there's no doubt, the ox gored and killed the cow. Urevia nezek lavlad, and 1/4 of the value of the cow. Why?
Because you're not exactly sure what happened, but it looks suspicious.
We're less than exactly. We're not sure at all. We're not sure at all when that calf was born. So we can't make Tova pay the entire debt, which would be half the value. By the same token, we can't expect Harriet to bear the entire loss because maybe Tova's ox killed Harriet's fetus, because maybe the fetus was inside the cow at the time of the goring. So we split the difference. on the calf, right? Okay. So
And you couldn't use, like, the cow, because it wasn't killed properly?
well, that's another story.
that's
Whether
another
what
story.
it's word, right? Because well,
We don't wanna
what
get into that.
no, well, what Marcia's bringing up is that you have an animal which was killed not with the benefit of shechita. It's called a nevela. So you know, if you go into a Purdue chicken or whatever it is, that's a nevela, and there are rules as to what we can do with that carcass, right? So, and those rules are going to apply because it is a nevela. It certainly did not have shechita. If it had shechita, so the shochet could tell us what took place, right?
Oh, okay.
But in any event, the animal, the cow is dead, the fetus is dead. We don't know what took place exactly. We know that the ox is responsible, at least for the death of the mother, of the cow. So the decision is that Tova pays Harriet half the value of the cow, 1/4 the value of the. But how is this decided? What did the litigants have to do to make this ruling take place?
Compromise.
They didn't swear.
No.
Why not?
at all, but it's a predetermined.
Yeah, it was- yeah.
The
facts are
by
there.
the you know, whatever is predetermined for an avela, for this cow, that type of a price. Everybody, doesn't matter if this cow weighs 250 pounds or 450. It's half the price of whatever it is.
Right. Well, the price is not the problem. The problem is responsibility. In other words, in the case of the lady in Famous paying the landscaper, right? So she knows what happened. The landscaper also knows what happened. They're testifying in court as to what happened, right? So now, do we make them swear? Do we not make them swear? In the case of Miriam and Fran, each of them also knows, and they're prepared to come into court and testify as to what took place, right? In this case, with the cow and the fetus, can we do that?
No.
Can we bring
And
Tova?
tough.
Can we bring Tova and Harriet into court and say, Harriet, what happened?
She doesn't know.
Doesn't know.
Swearing is not
Can
necessary.
Tova tell us what happened?
No.
No, because she doesn't know. So we can't settle it. So this case is another case where there's a dispute over monetary damages, basically, or who owes what to whom. That's right? Who owes what to whom? All the teachers here, right? So, but we can't settle it based on their testimony. Okay, so it's one more situation where there's a doubt as to who owes what, and it's up to us as the court to settle it. So what we do is what is definite, that's definite. Whatever the price of the cow is, doesn't matter. There is a set price. Maybe it's by the weight of the cow. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. But everybody agrees that Tova owes Harriet half the value of that cow. Then it comes to the calf. The decision is we split it because we can't do anything else.
What
That's
if
what
the
we do.
fetus is alive?
If the fetus is alive, it's alive. Then there's no doubt. I mean, we feel sorry he lost his mama, but the fetus is still there. You're still going to raise it. It's going to become this great big ox one day. So we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so we have 3 different scenarios, right? Of doubtful ownership or doubtful damages. Okay, let's just continue with the Mishnah because it's interesting to me. So he says, "V'kein para shenoches ashor." So how about if the cow saw the bull is coming, she's pregnant, she's worried about her calf, or maybe she gave birth already, so she turns around and she gores the ox. What happens? So the Cain Parish Shenochas Ashor, so the cow gored the ox, V'nimsa Vlada B'tzida, and now the fetus is found on the ground, dead fetus, right? Ve'en yadua im ad shelo nokha yolda, im misha nokha yolda. We don't know if the goring by the cow of the ox, right? So now Harriet's cow gored Tova's ox, right? And we don't know whether this dead fetus was born prior to the goring or after. Why does it matter?
Fee. Pain.
But what difference would it make financially, Marilyn?
Does the cow
Between a
get any
quarter and a
benefit
half.
does the cow get any benefit for supporting her young? I mean, that's the strongest instinct possible.
Well, we're talking as the owners of the animals. I mean,
Right, so my cow was pregnant and the gore threatened the baby, so she responded. She had a real reason to.
That was normal behavior for the pregnant cow.
But we're not sure about that because we didn't see it. We didn't see it happen. It could be that she saw this bull and she decided she'd gore him. We don't really know. We weren't there.
But you said the baby was already alive.
The baby was born dead. The baby alive. That was Eva's question. What happens? So we come into the pen and we see the cow is standing there. The ox is dead. There's a dead fetus on the ground. That's what we see.
So then Harriet has to pay
Tova.
Tova.
Harriet has to pay Tova for the ox. That's no question.
Yeah, but what was the ox doing in the pen with the cow?
Nobody knows.
You don't wanna know that.
Nobody.
Okay.
The cow is pregnant.
Yeah, but where was the ox supposed to be? What was,
There's only one pen
They didn't
to
have room.
protect. The ox will take a hide.
Okay.
So what's the question?
The question.
So
Question.
if the
I have a question.
go ahead.
Usually, the nature of an animal is when they right away, when they give birth, regardless of dead or alive, they would protect the fetus, and they would hit anything that comes towards them. And so, more likely, she was not pregnant. When she's pregnant, she doesn't have that nature. So it's more likely that she gave birth, and the ox came over to her, and she started up with him, and he gave it back. It doesn't make sense that a pregnant cow would hit an ox that comes towards her. That's nature.
Okay, so the Gemara is not getting into the psychology of the animals. I hear what you're saying. What the natural impulse, the natural reaction. But our question here, and we're not going to get to answer it today because we're about out of time. Our question is that if I have two animals, and each of the animals damages the third one. So let's say in our case, Tova has one ox and Harriet has two cows, and each of the cows participate in the goring of Tova's ox. Okay? Now, the owner of those cows, Harriet, has to pay half the value of Tova's ox for each of the cows. Because each of the cows participated in the damage to Tova's ox.
And it's only one ox.
Only one ox, but you're paying based on who did the damage. So Harriet, as the owner of the
Not
cow,
the value of the damage.
in the end, the value, she's going to get her whole value because there's two cows. But the point was, in the case of the fetus inside the body of the cow, if at the time of the goring, the calf had not been born, so now that calf participated in the damage of Tova's ox. Pardon?
You said if it had not been born.
If it had not been born,
But if it had not been born, how could it have participated?
because it's inside the body of the mother,
Because it's
and
part of the cow.
it's part of the cow, and halachically, it participated in the damage. If the calf had been born beforehand,
But we don't know, right?
we don't know. Right, that's our problem. So now next week we're going to find out how do we rule in this case, and does it apply to the other cases that we've been talking about.
Wow.
But thanks everybody.